Hello, everyone. My name is Elena Voss, and if you're hearing this, I need you to sit down, because what I'm about to tell you still makes my hands shake 3 years later. Before I go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know who is with me tonight. And if this story hits you the way it still hits me, please subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss the rest. I was the kind of woman who believed in forever, not the Instagram version, the real one. The kind where you build a life so carefully that you stop noticing the cracks until the whole house collapses on top of you. I met Daniel when I was 26. He was 30, charming in that quiet, steady way that makes you feel safe. We married 2 years later in a small garden ceremony. My closest friend, Sophia, was my maid of honor. She had been my roommate in college, the one who held my hair back after bad dates, the one who cried with me when my father died. I trusted her more than I trusted myself. For 5 years, everything looked perfect. We bought a house on the edge of the city. I worked as a senior editor at a publishing house. Daniel ran a successful design firm. We talked about children. We even started looking at cribs. I thought we were waiting for the right moment. I didn't know the right moment had already arrived for someone else. It started with small things. Daniel working late more often. Sophia canceling our weekly dinners with vague excuses about migraines. I noticed, but I explained it away the way women do when they love people too much. Stress, busy season, life. Then came the night everything changed. I came home early from a book launch because I had a fever. The house was dark except for the soft glow under our bedroom door. I heard voices, soft laughter. The kind of laughter that doesn't belong in a marriage. I opened the door. Sophia was on our bed, wearing one of my silk robes. Daniel was behind her, his hands on her waist. They froze when they saw me. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Sophia scrambled for the sheets and Daniel started saying my name like it was a prayer that could fix what I had just seen. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there and felt something inside me go completely silent. The kind of silence that comes after a bomb goes off and your ears are still ringing. I walked out of the room, down the stairs, and sat on the front steps in the cold until morning. When Daniel finally came outside, barefoot and desperate, I told him 2 things. 1, pack a bag. 2, I want a divorce, and I want it quiet. No scenes, no lawyers screaming, no social media posts. I hired a discreet attorney. I signed the papers. I kept the house because it was in my name. He moved in with Sophia within a week. I didn't ask questions. I didn't call. I simply erased them both from my daily life the way you delete a corrupted file. People thought I was cold. My mother called me strong. My colleagues whispered that I was handling it well. The truth is, I wasn't handling anything. I was surviving in a body that no longer felt like mine. 3 months after the divorce was final, I received a text from a mutual acquaintance. It was a photo of Sophia's ultrasound, twins. The caption read, "Daniel's going to be a dad." I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I deleted it and went back to work. I told myself the story was over. I had done the graceful thing. I had walked away without drama. That was supposed to be the end. It wasn't. 6 months later, Daniel's mother, Margaret, called me. Her voice was thin and careful. She asked if I would come to the house for tea. Just tea. She said there was something she needed to say that she couldn't put in a message. I almost said no. Then something inside me, the same quiet thing that had kept me from screaming that night, told me to go. Margaret's house still smelled like the lemon polish she used every Sunday. She poured the tea with hands that trembled slightly. We sat in the living room where Daniel and I had once opened Christmas presents. The silence stretched until she finally spoke. "Elena," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." I waited. "When you and Daniel were still married, did Sophia ever tell you about the twins?" I frowned. "What do you mean? The pregnancy happened after the divorce." Margaret's face went pale. The teacup in her hand rattled against the saucer. She set it down carefully, like it might shatter if she moved too fast. "She never told you that, did she?" she whispered. The room tilted. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "The twins weren't conceived after you left, Elena. Sophia was already pregnant when you found them. She knew. Daniel knew. They both knew." I stared at her. The ultrasound you saw, Margaret continued, voice breaking, was the second one. The first one happened 2 weeks before you walked in on them. Sophia came to me. She was terrified. She asked me to keep it secret until after the divorce was final. She said it would be cleaner that way, less messy for everyone. I felt the air leave my lungs. Daniel told me they were careful, Margaret said. He said it was a mistake that happened once. But Sophia admitted to me later that it had been going on for almost a year. The twins. They were planned, Elena. At least on her side. She wanted a family with him. She just didn't want the inconvenience of you still being in the picture. I sat very still. The lemon polish smell suddenly made me nauseous. Margaret reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. I should have told you then. I was a coward. I chose my son over what was right. And now those babies are almost a year old. And every time I hold them, I feel like I'm holding a lie. I pulled my hand away gently. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. She looked down at her lap. Because Sophia is pregnant again. And this time she's asking me to babysit the twins while she and Daniel go on a baby moon. And I can't do it. I can't keep pretending this family was built on anything but theft. I stood up. My legs felt steady for the first time in months. Thank you for the tea, Margaret, I said. And thank you for finally telling me the truth. I left without another word. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off and let the full weight of it settle. Not just the affair, not just the pregnancy. The deliberate, calculated way they had timed everything so that I would walk away clean and quiet while they built their new life on top of the ruins of mine. I had been so proud of how gracefully I left. I thought dignity was the highest form of revenge. I was wrong. Dignity is what you give people who deserve it. They didn't. The next morning, I opened my laptop and began to dig. Bank records, old emails I had never deleted. The private messages Sophia had once sent me when she was worried about Daniel working too hard. The timeline started to form like a photograph developing in chemical solution. They had been careful, but not careful enough. I found the hotel receipts from the weekend Daniel claimed he was at a design conference in Chicago. Sophia's phone location data, which she had once shared with me for safety, still sat in an old cloud backup. The fertility clinic appointment under a fake name that used Daniel's credit card. Every piece of evidence was quiet, legal, undeniable. I didn't confront them. I didn't send screenshots. I didn't make a scene. I simply began to prepare. Because the thing about walking away without drama is that people assume you're finished. They never consider that silence can be the sound of someone loading a weapon they can't see coming. And I had just found the perfect one. I spent the next 3 weeks building something quiet and precise. Not a public explosion, not a screaming match. Something that would settle into their lives the way rot settles into wood. Slow, invisible, and irreversible. The fertility clinic was the first thread I pulled. The appointment under the false name had used Daniel's corporate card. I still had access to the shared cloud folder from our marriage, the one he never remembered to revoke. Inside were scanned receipts, dates, and a confirmation email that listed Sophia's real blood type, and a note about prior consultation regarding multiple gestation. They had planned the twins. They had timed the conception so that by the time I discovered the affair, the pregnancy would already be past the point of easy termination. Clean exit for them, maximum damage for me. I printed everything. Then I sat with it for 2 full nights, deciding what kind of woman I was going to become. On the 3rd night, I called Margaret again. Her voice was smaller than before. I told her I needed one more piece of information. The name of the pediatrician the twins used, and the address of the new house Daniel and Sophia had bought in the suburbs. She gave both without asking why. Guilt is a powerful key. I drove past the house once. A white colonial with black shutters and a porch swing that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The twins' names, Lila and Noah, were painted on a wooden sign by the door. I didn't stop. I just memorized the street, the neighbors' cars, the soft glow of the nursery windows at dusk. My plan had 3 stages. First, money. Daniel's design firm had always run on thin margins and large client retainers. I still knew the passwords to the old project management software. I didn't steal. I simply forwarded 3 critical client contracts, ones that were about to renew, to a competitor I trusted, along with polite notes that the firm was restructuring. The clients left within 10 days. Daniel's cash flow tightened like a noose. Second, reputation. Sophia had built a small lifestyle brand on Instagram. Soft filtered photos of motherhood, captioned with words like grace and chosen family. I created a private account under a neutral name and began following the same circles she moved in. I never posted, I only watched. Then I started sending anonymous, carefully worded messages to the women who featured her products. I included no accusations, only dates and public records. The hotel nights that overlapped with our marriage, the clinic appointment, the timeline of the ultrasound she had pretended was new. I never used the word affair. I simply asked whether the brand still felt authentic once the numbers were laid side by side. Within 2 weeks, her engagement dropped. Sponsors quietly stepped back. She posted a long caption about haters and protecting my peace. I smiled at the screen and closed the laptop. Third, and most important, the truth that could not be unsaid. I waited until the twins' first birthday. Sophia had planned a small garden party. Margaret called me the morning of, voice shaking, and said she couldn't go through with babysitting the children while the parents left for their baby moon the following week. She asked if I would meet her at a cafe instead. I went. Margaret looked older than the last time. She slid a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten letter from Sophia to Daniel, dated 6 weeks before I walked in on them. It was short and brutal. Once the divorce is final, we can stop pretending. The twins will be here by spring. She'll leave quietly if we give her nothing to fight over. I already made the appointment. Don't lose your nerve. Margaret's eyes were red. I found it in an old drawer when I was helping them pack for the move. I should have burned it. I couldn't. I folded the letter and put it in my bag. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing dramatic, I said. Just the truth, delivered at the right moment. That evening, I sat in my car 2 blocks from their house and watched the birthday balloons bob in the wind. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I only needed the guest list, which Margaret had already given me. Among the names was Daniel's largest remaining client, a woman named Claire who had once been my college roommate before Sophia took that title. I sent Claire a single email the next morning. Subject line: something you deserve to know before you sign the next contract. Attached were the clinic records, the hotel receipts, the letter, and a calm timeline. No emotional language, just facts and dates. I ended with one sentence. I walked away without drama so their children would not grow up in the middle of a war. I will not stay silent while they build a life on the version of events they sold you. Claire replied in less than an hour. She canceled the contract. Then she forwarded the email to 3 other people in the same professional circle. By the end of the week, Daniel's firm had lost 2 more retainers. Sophia's brand lost its last major sponsorship. They began arguing in the house with the black shutters. Margaret told me the twins had started waking at night from the raised voices. I still did not confront them directly. Instead, I did something quieter. I hired a private investigator, not to dig further, but to deliver a single package to their front door on a Tuesday morning while they were both home. Inside the package was a printed copy of every document, every receipt, every message, bound in a plain black folder. On the first page, I had written only 1 line in my own handwriting. She never told you that, did she? I watched from a distance as Daniel opened the door, took the package, and closed it again. 10 minutes later, the nursery lights went on. Then the living room lights. Then the whole house seemed to hold its breath. That night, my phone rang. Daniel's number. I let it go to voicemail. He left 3 messages. The first was angry. The second was pleading. The third was silent for a long time before he finally whispered, "How long have you known?" I deleted them all. Sophia tried next. She sent a long text about the children, about how I was punishing innocence, about how I had chosen cruelty. I read it once and blocked the number. Margaret called the following evening. Her voice was steady for the first time in months. "They're selling the house," she said. "Daniel's firm is in free fall. Sophia's account is private now. The baby moon is canceled. And Elena, the twins are staying with me for a while. Sophia asked if I would take them until things settle." I closed my eyes. "Will you?" I asked. "Yes," she said. I sat on my porch that night and watched the city lights. The silence I had carried for so long no longer felt empty. It felt like power that had finally found its shape. I had not screamed. I had not begged. I had simply refused to let their version of the story remain the only one that existed. And now the story was rewriting itself without me having to raise my voice at all. The next morning, I received one final message from an unknown number. It was Sophia. "You win. What do you want?" I typed a single reply and sent it before I could change my mind. "Nothing from you. Just the knowledge that every time you look at those children, you will remember the cost of what you stole. That is enough." Then I blocked that number too. I thought the revenge was complete. I was wrong again. 3 days later, Margaret arrived at my door with a small envelope and eyes that could not meet mine. "There's more," she said. "Something even I didn't know until yesterday." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a single medical document dated 4 months before the twins were born. My name was on it, and the words beneath it made the world tilt for the second time. I stared at the paper in my hands. The clinic letterhead was familiar, the same fertility center whose records I had already used against them. The date sat 4 months before the twins were born. My full name was printed at the top as the patient. Beneath it, in clinical black ink, were the words that rewrote everything I thought I understood. Patient reports intentional use of previously cryopreserved oocytes belonging to Elena Voss, obtained during marital fertility consultation 2 years prior. Partner, Daniel Voss, provided written consent under existing joint account. Gestational carrier identified as Sophia Lang. Patient requests records remain confidential from legal spouse. My vision narrowed to those sentences. Margaret's voice came from far away. "I found it when I was clearing the safe at the old house. Daniel kept a copy. He never destroyed it." I read the paragraph again. The eggs I had frozen when we first talked about children, eggs I believed were still waiting for us, had been thawed, fertilized, and placed inside Sophia while I still slept in the same bed as my husband. The twins were not simply the product of an affair. They were the product of a theft that reached into my body itself. I set the paper down carefully, as if it might burn the table. Margaret was crying now, quiet and continuous. He told me later it was the only way Sophia would agree to keep the pregnancy. She wanted biological children with him, but her own reserves were low. He said it was already done by the time he confessed to me. He begged me not to tell you. He said you would never recover. I looked at her. "And you listened?" "Yes." The word was barely sound. "I chose my son. I will live with that." I stood, folded the document, and placed it in my bag beside the letter she had given me earlier. My hands were steady. The silence that had lived inside me since the night I opened that bedroom door finally had a shape. It was no longer emptiness. It was a blade. I did not call Daniel. I did not message Sophia. I drove to my attorney's office the next morning and laid every piece of paper on the conference table. The clinic records, the hotel receipts, the handwritten letter, and this final document that proved the depth of the violation. My attorney, a woman who had handled my quiet divorce without judgment, read in silence. When she finished, she looked up and said only, "We can do more than divorce papers now. We filed a civil suit for conversion of biological material, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." The evidence was clean, chronological, and devastating. Daniel's attorneys tried to settle within 48 hours. I refused the first offer. I refused the second. I accepted the third only when it included a permanent injunction. Neither Daniel nor Sophia could ever again claim the twins' genetic origin was solely theirs in any public or private record. The settlement also required a substantial financial transfer into a trust for the children, money that could never pass through the parents' hands. The day the papers were signed, I sat in my car outside the courthouse and watched Daniel walk to his vehicle alone. He looked smaller than the man I had married. Sophia was not with him. Margaret later told me she had moved out the week the lawsuit became public, taking the twins to her mother's house in another state. The Instagram account that once glowed with soft-filtered motherhood went permanently dark. I did not celebrate. There was nothing left to celebrate. What remained was the work of living. I sold the house that still smelled faintly of lemon polish and the life I had tried to build inside it. I took a senior editorial position at a smaller press on the coast, far from the city where every street corner carried a memory. I bought a cottage with a garden that needed real work, not performance. I planted tomatoes and lavender and the kind of roses that require patience. Some nights I still woke with the weight of those clinic words on my chest. On those nights, I made tea and sat on the porch until the dark softened into morning. Margaret wrote me once a year. Short letters, updates on the twins' growth, never asking for forgiveness, never offering excuses. I answered once. I told her the truth was enough. I did not need her suffering as proof. 2 years after the settlement, a mutual acquaintance mentioned that Daniel's firm had closed. He was working freelance under a different name. Sophia had remarried someone older and quieter. The twins lived primarily with their grandmother. I felt no satisfaction in the news. The revenge I had constructed was never about watching them fall. It was about refusing to let the lie remain the foundation of anyone's life, including mine. I still keep the original clinic document in a locked drawer, not as a trophy. As a reminder that silence can be a weapon, but only if you eventually choose the moment to set it down. Last month, I stood in my garden at dusk and realized the air no longer tasted like grief. The lavender was blooming. A neighbor's child laughed somewhere beyond the fence. I was 36 years old, alone by choice, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt like something I could walk into without checking over my shoulder. If you have stayed with me through all 3 parts of this story, thank you. I told it because the version that circulated in whispers, the graceful divorce, the quiet exit, was incomplete. The full truth needed air. My name is Elena Voss. I was betrayed by the 2 people I trusted most. I left without drama. And then I made certain the drama could never be rewritten in their favor again. That is the end of what happened. The beginning of what comes next belongs only to me.